and was trying to figure out how the embassy could use this. I started a podcast. It was amazing, actually. And then I went from there to Stockholm, Sweden, where I served as the Deputy Public Affairs Officer, and again was trying to get strategy and order out of chaos, I guess you could say, from the social media world into what we were doing in Stockholm. And then I went from there to Washington, D.C., where I was a trainer, and I was training outgoing press officers, press and media officers, on how to work with the press in general, how to be a spokesperson, but also how to set up the social media at their posts. I did two things. I taught both platforms. I taught, this is a tweet, this is a hashtag, that kind of stuff. And then I also did larger social media strategy training. Today is going to be the latter. It's going to be larger social media strategy. I figure most people, hopefully at this point, know how to use Twitter, know how to use Facebook. If you don't, then there's a YouTube video, I'm sure, that can help you with that. So we're gonna start out with that. There's a couple of big things, though, when it comes to social media and social media strategy, especially, that I like to emphasize. The first one is from one of my co-trainers, Karina Dubois, at the State Department. And she would always say, social media is free like a puppy is free. And I think that that's a very good comparison. Because you go to the Smith supermarket and there's this box of puppies outside and they're like, hey, have a puppy. And the kids are like, free puppy. And the dads are like, no. Because the dads know it means walking that dog. It means taking the dog to the vet. It means investing time, talent, and resources into that dog that is far beyond free dog, right? And likewise, our principals in our organizations, our CEOs or bishops, or however we want to phrase that, they'll say, hey, you can do a Facebook page, that's free, right? And yes, but you still need to invest the time and the talent and the resources into making that social media good. I was talking to one person here before we started the meeting today, and she says, yes, and they think that we can do it on 5% of our time, but what you really need is a full-time social media professional. And really, to do it well, that might be what your organization needs. Now, most of us work for religious organizations, which means that most of us don't have the money or the budget for a full-time social media person. So hopefully some of these strategy things will help you figure out how to streamline your social media presence. I look at social media, a way of kind of organizing my thoughts around social media strategy is following an ABCDE method. And I'll go through what each one of those stands for, but it just kind of helps me think, okay, first we need to start with A, then B, then C, then D, then E. Namely, A is audience. You need to look at your audience. B is behavior. What is the behavior you're trying to change in your audience? C is content. What is your message that you're trying to get across? D is design. How are you going to get that message across? And then E is evaluation. So we're going to break this down. We're going to take them one by one, and we're going to talk about each one of those individually. Starting with audience, and by the way, I'm pretty proud of the way I did the banner at the top. And it took me a long time because I'm not a PowerPoint professional as much as I may be a social media professional. Talking about meta audience a little bit and what our target audience should be with any group of people that you talk to, whether it's this room, whether it's a high school, whether it's a congregation, whether it's a social media audience, you can divide that group of people up into 4 categories. The first one is going to be the people that love you. These are the people that no matter what you say, they're going to love you, right? You could say, to use a timely quote, we're going to annihilate North Korea, and they would still love you, right? For those of you that didn't watch the general debate this morning with the UN, you don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, then you have the people that are going to hate you. It doesn't matter what you do, they're going to hate you. Neither one of these groups is your target audience, because people that love you are going to love you. People that hate you are going to hate you. You're not going to be able to change anybody's minds. Third group of people are most of the people in this room that are asleep while you're talking to them. They don't necessarily have to be physically asleep, but these are people that are kind of brain dead to the message. They're thinking about, what am I going to make for dinner? They're writing their grocery list. They're thinking about other things, right? These people can still be reached, okay? In social media, what you need to do then is have content that's going to wake them up, okay? Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. And then the fourth group of people, these are people that are thinking. These are the people that are listening to what you say. They don't automatically love you. They don't automatically hate you. But they're thinking, maybe there's something here that I should read. Maybe there's something here I should look at. Maybe there's something here for me. And that's the group of people that's really the sweet spot. So the question is, with all media, but social media as well, is how do we grab the attention of those people, and how do we get what we need out of them? So when we look at audience more specifically, before you start any kind of posting with social media, you want to define your audience as narrowly as possible. I used to hate it when I would talk to these press officers and say, okay, what's your audience for this? And they'll say the general public. I'm like, yeah, no, that doesn't work. Why? Because that's much too broad. You know, if I'm posting as a social media practitioner from the LDS church, I'm going to post very differently if my audience is LDS or if my audience is Catholic, right? And depending on what my target audience is, that's going to dictate a lot of what comes after this. So you need to know the age, you need to know the gender, you need to know the marital status, what they like, what else are they interested in? Are they interested in religion writ large? Are they only interested in Mormonism? When are they online? You know, if your target audience is only online on the weekends, don't waste your time posting on Monday through Friday. Where do they live? You're going to talk about very different issues if we're talking about Florida and Texas right now than if we're talking about Washington. Why are they following you? What are they trying to get out of you, and how can you help them with that? One story, the JetBlue has a really good social media feed, actually. The story of their social media feed came, though, because the guy was posting and just kind of posting whatever and getting no feedback. And finally, he just kind of threw up his hands in frustration. He said, "What do you want from me?" And people answered. And they said, "This is what we want. You know, tell us about this. Tell us about flight delays. Be honest with us," whatever it was. And so he knew his audience a lot more after that, and he could post what they needed. But the more we can find out about the audience, the more we can attract them and engage them. Second one, our B's, behavior and barriers. When we know our audience, we know what they're like, you know, we want to figure out what behavior we're trying to change. Maybe the behavior we're trying to change is simply that they're more informed about programs that we're doing. I looked at a lot of the different RCC member social media feeds in preparation for this. One of the ones that I was really impressed with in terms of the behavior that they're trying to change was the Seventh-day Adventists. Because they have a new show. It's kind of like The View. I forget what the name of it is, but it's kind of like The View, where there's, you know, women chatting around a table, but they're trying to attract people's attention to the show. And so their social media feed, you can really, really tell that that's what they're trying to do. That's the behavior that they're trying to change. So what are we trying to get them to do? How are we trying to change their minds? You know, what are we trying to get them to think? Or how are we trying to get them to act differently? But then there's always barriers to that. So what are the assumptions, the preconditions that we need to overcome, right? In the Mormon church, right, it's this pervading theory that we all have 8 wives. You know, that's always a barrier you have to overcome when you're talking to people. At least I do, as a public affairs professional for the Mormon church. But there's also barriers to access. You know, a lot of us are social media professionals, but a lot of our audiences are now overseas, right? Look at the growth of, say, the Methodist Church in Africa, or is it Episcopalian? One of the two. There's growth in Africa, right? But the African audience is going to have barriers to access, you know? And our bishop or our CEO is saying, hey, can't you just post a video? They can download that and Ouagadougou, right? You're like, yeah, no. You know, so you have to look at what are the barriers to access, what are the psychological barriers that you're going to have to overcome so that that behavior can be changed. Content. What is our main message? What are we trying to get people to remember? There's a book called Made to Stick that I really like. So Mary knows it, which really kind of says, these are sticky messages. This is what people think of. The message has to be, I'm just going to read them, simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and story-driven. Okay? And when we get our main message down, then we can figure out the delivery mechanism for that. I think I was actually giving a sermon this weekend, and part of my sermon was revolving around sticky messages, funnily enough. But one of the big ones that I used was see something, say something, right? They condense so much into that message. You know, it's being aware of your surroundings, it's notifying officials, it's whatever. And it's said in such a way that you remember it easily, and it's easily translatable, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to have that main message down. How are we gonna, what is the main point that we're trying to convey? And then D, and we're gonna go spend a lot of time on design, because that's really where all the work gets in. And remember, this is all stuff that you're deciding before you post anything. And what happens often, especially with social media and especially with our principals that are like, hey, you start posting on Facebook, is that they want you to start posting tomorrow. But you have to think through everything, right? And what happens often is that people skip to the design immediately. Well, we can post on Facebook. Well, what if none of our followers are on Facebook? What if the people that we try to reach aren't on Facebook? We're trying to reach people in China. We're not going to be posting on Facebook. We're going to be posting on Weibo, right? Let's look at some of these things. So with design, it's the journalism who's, or journalism W's, right? Who, what, when, where, why, who's doing the posting, what's getting posted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to look through each one of these individually. So who does the posting? Okay. You have to decide as an organization who's going to have access to your account, and who's going to be actually doing the tweeting or posting on Facebook or doing all of that. This is important that people trust you. You're the social media manager, right? The way I often look at it, and I think I might have this somewhere else as well. Actually, I do have this somewhere else, so never mind. I'm gonna, actually, sorry, I'm a little disjointed. Skipping down a couple bullet points, what kind of clearance process do we need for the post? That's a big one. Because social media, like I said at the beginning, it's free like a puppy, it's free, it takes time. And what we're trying to do is streamline how much time it takes, okay? So when we look at content on the internet, I think it's always best to define it in terms of buckets of information. And so the social media manager should have the leeway to post the non-committal bucket of information without running it by anybody else. So they say, okay, we always post something about Christian holidays. So I should be able to post stuff about Christian holidays without running it by anybody else. It's going to be completely benign. Have a happy Christmas. My Christian holidays are leaving me right now. Day of Pentecost, whatever it is. I should be able to post those without running it by anybody else, right? And the boss should be okay with that. Now that's going to take conversations probably. But then you get the more sticky bucket, right? Well, what if there's, you know, a response to somebody, some troll or somebody's posting on our social media and they're trying to say something that's not correct doctrinally with our beliefs, you know, can I respond to them? Well, yeah, you can respond to them, but maybe one other person or two other people need to take a look at that. And then you have crisis situations where maybe 18 people need to look at it before you post something. But I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to social media managers and they say, before I post anything, 18 people need to clear it. And that kind of defeats the purpose of social media. right? Granted, there are some cases where you need that, but if 18 people are looking at every single tweet that you're tweeting, what's the point of having a social media manager? They should be able to respond quickly and efficiently. Going back a step, what is our voice? What is the voice we're trying to portray for our organization? Are we trying to be more laid back? Are we trying to be more serious? Is it going to be very institutional? Is it going to differ from platform to platform? You look at some brands that I wouldn't think would be super snarky, and they are super snarky. Kmart, for example, has a super snarky feed. Wendy's has a super snarky feed. My favorite one from Kmart is somebody tweeted at them and said, "What school supplies do I need to bring for school this year?" And Kmart tweeted back and said, "Just a backpack. You can borrow stuff from your friends for everything else." but they had a definite different voice than you would expect. But that's something that needs to be decided and thought about. Ghostwriting for principals. Okay, a lot of people, especially the CEO or the bishop, they want to have their own social media feed. But social media is free, like a puppy is free. And they often say, set up a Twitter account for me. And then they realize after 3 days that it takes work. I can think of only one principal in the entire world right now that does all the tweeting himself. And so you have to say, okay, are we going to have a ghostwriter for this principal? Now with social media, you need to have authenticity as well. And people can see through inauthentic accounts very quickly, and it turns them off. So if you're going to have a ghostwriter, my suggestion is to just be forthright about it. Just say, this account is being controlled by Michelle Obama, because this is exactly what she does. Michelle Obama's staff. Tweets from Michelle will be signed MO. So every once in a while, Michelle Obama gets online and she tweets her own stuff. She signs it MO. Everybody knows it's her. Everybody knows that the rest of it is her staff, but it's stuff she's trying to convey. And so it's a pretty happy place there. And then how do we respond to trolls? When people are, being mean to us or trolling us, do we ignore them? Do we engage with them? What do we try to do? This is something that's decided at your organization before you start tweeting, and it's going to be different for everybody, but you need to talk about it. One of our embassies in Latin America, they actually had a troll that was like, "I hate America, I hate America, I hate America." And they're finally like, what do we do? So they wrote back and they said, well, we're sorry you hate America, but this is where you can find the explanation of our foreign policy and why, this issue that you have problems with is why we're trying to defend it that way. He writes back and he's like, "Thank you so much for responding to me." And after that, his rhetoric changed from "I hate America" to "I generally dislike America." But it was still better because they engaged with him. What do we post? This goes back to our audience and our goals. Again, I studied a lot of the social media feeds from RCC member organizations. The 7th Speak Up is the view type show that they're trying to promote. The Episcopalians, looking at the Episcopalian social media feed. Do you do the social media feed? No, I do not. Okay. But looking at their social media feed, they have like prayers every 3rd day or so. Like, this is a prayer for this is a prayer for this. And I was really impressed because out of everybody that I looked at, they were the only one that had a message from their presiding bishop about the hurricanes in Texas and Florida. Soka Gakkai, it's very interesting looking at their social media feed because every 3rd day or so, it's like this message from Daisaku Ikeda. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I'm sorry. But it's a message from him to the practitioners. So it's not a prayer so much as it is a little, you can do this, I like you. And they have profiles of members of the church, kind of to say, we are members of your community just like everybody else. So really, what are we looking at? What's the behavior we're trying to change? And what are we going to post to get that behavior changed? When do we post? Is the other big one. This comes from knowing your audience. When are they online? When are you going to be able to reach them the best? With all of this, my biggest suggestion always is developing an editorial calendar. The worst thing in the world for a social media manager is to sit down on Monday and say, what am I going to tweet today? I don't know. Talking to your friend, what are we going to tweet today? I don't know. What do you want to tweet today? I don't know. But sitting down with a smaller group once a week, once every other week, once a month, and kind of planning out, okay, this month we have the presiding bishop is going to speak on the 13th. We're going to tweet stuff about that. We have Christmas on the 25th. We're going to tweet stuff about that. There's certain events that you know are coming up that you can plan for. And so you can do all of that in advance. And when you know those events are coming up, then you do those all in advance, and then you're not wasting time thinking every single day about what you're going to be posting. And I think that the webinar next month is going to be talking a lot more about posting more in less time and that kind of stuff. When you have a lot of those routine things out of the way, then you also can respond to events as they happen better. It frees up that time to respond to events as they happen because you're not dealing with the routine stuff. You have to be careful, however, if you are scheduling your tweets and your posts in advance, that events of the day don't overshadow that. For example, it would be a bad time in Florida right now to be saying, I just love the rain, it helps the plants grow, or something like that. Not that, you know, our professional social media would be posting that, but you have to be aware of what's happening. So when big events happen, you need to review those scheduled tweets to see if you need to delete some of them or not delete some of them. The last thing I'll say, actually, of when do we post, which I don't have on here, is if our principal is making a speech or an address. We all work in public affairs, in public, you know, the public aspect of it. Chances are we have a copy of those remarks in advance, or at least a copy of the as prepared remarks. We can already go ahead and craft some tweets based on those remarks. You know, if he's scheduled to speak or she's scheduled to speak at 12:30, we have him go out at 12:45. We can have those in the queue so that at the event, we can be taking the picture and tagging the picture and worrying about other stuff instead of tweeting out excerpts from the speech. Yeah. All this is designed to streamline things. Where do we post and how often? This is dictated by knowing your audience. If your audience is on Twitter, don't waste time on Facebook. If your audience is on Facebook, don't waste time on Twitter. If your audience is on Facebook, that's going to be less conducive to multiple postings quickly. If your audience is on Twitter, they love everything. Okay, Twitter users are super, super into a lot of information all the time. So it just depends on knowing your audience and knowing what's going on. You know, I talked about not going into the intricacies of all the platforms in this presentation, but I will say that I believe that social media should be social. There should be a back and forth. And if you're using social media like a broadcast media, then you're doing it wrong. And so when people ask me which platform should I be on, my general feeling is you should be on platforms in which you can be social. And a lot of organizations are like, well, we want to get on Snapchat because that's where the kids are today. Yes, that is where the kids are today. But Snapchat is a lot harder to have the back and forth. Tumblr is harder to have the back and forth. Facebook and Twitter are still really good because you can have the back and forth conversations there. And why do we need to be social? Because when we have that back and forth conversation and when people tweet us directly, they gain loyalty in their followers. A couple of quick examples. It used to always bug me when President Obama would speak to a room, because it seemed like the first 15 minutes of any speech he gave, he was just kind of like giving shout outs to all his friends in the audience. Like, hey, Lisa, it's nice to see you. Hey, how's it going, Shirley? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But thinking about it, that's super smart on his part, because when the President of the United States says your name, then you're his forever, or hers eventually, hopefully. Likewise, on social media, if you respond to somebody, if you retweet somebody, you don't even have to do much. You can like their tweet, although you have to be careful with that, as recent events have also shown. That can do so much to build up brand loyalty and loyalty from your audience. Give you one personal example. It's kind of a long story, but I watch Dancing with the Stars fairly religiously. It started when I was overseas, and my grandma thought I would like the show, and so she VHS taped Dancing with the Stars for me every week and would send me these VHS tapes of Dancing with the Stars. So when I first started getting into social media, I started following all of the judges and the contestants and, you know, all of that. And just, anyway, yesterday I did watch the premiere. It was the premiere of the season yesterday. But at one point, one of the judges, Karen Anaba, tweeted something out, said, "We're going to have a show on Halloween. What should we dress as?" And I tweeted something stupid back, and figuring it just went into ether somewhere. A little while later, she tweets out, "Having so much fun reading all of your answers. I'm going to retweet some of them soon." A couple hours later, whose tweet did she retweet? Mine. I was retweeted by Carrie Ann Anaba, and she doesn't know it, but she's my BFF forever. And here in New York, and for the online audience, here in New York, in the building that we're in, it's right across the street from where they filmed Kelly and Ryan. And a couple weeks ago, Carrie Ann Anaba was filling in for Kelly, and I got tickets to see my BFF. I was so excited. And this is years after that initial retweet. But it's this whole idea of when we're retweeting people, when we're engaging with people, we're changing those behaviors, we're changing those attitudes far more than we ever could by just using social media as a broadcast media. And that's what we want. We want that base, basically. And then why do we post? At this point, if you've thought through all of this, why we post should be fairly self-evident. We're posting to reach our audience, to change that behavior, to get this message across, and this is how we're going to do it. And my only thing with that is we need to keep our eye on the goal. It's so easy as a social media manager, because you have a lot of bosses telling you what to do, that this boss says, "Hey, post this," and this boss says, "Hey, post this," and this boss says, "Hey, post this," that all of a sudden you're posting stuff and there's no direction to your social media. And so really what you're trying to do is, by thinking everything through, by having that plan, to be able to go back and say, this is what I'm supposed to post. You know, we're going to have an editorial board meeting next month. We can talk about if there's going to be variations of that. I mean, you don't quite have to be like that. That's not going to win you friends in your organization. But still, you have that plan going in, and you can better react to stuff like that. Of course, with the caveat that in a crisis, everything gets thrown out the window. Everything. All of a sudden, 18 people are looking at your tweets. All of a sudden, you have these scheduled tweets that you're like, I'm going to get rid of this. Presiding bishop was supposed to speak. He's not going to speak anymore. It just gets thrown out of the window. So you have to react. You have to figure out, basically, maybe, or talk through what you're going to do in a crisis situation. Some crises that have come up lately in social media. We have Ted Cruz. Everybody know what happened to Ted Cruz? Yes. Okay. I don't need to retweet that or go into that. But what do we do if the social media manager accidentally tweets something that they're not supposed to tweet, or if the principal accidentally retweets something that they're not supposed to tweet, which we've also seen in recent days. I'm not saying Ted Cruz was the one that did it. Other principals have retweeted stuff that was questionable in recent days as well. Joel Osteen. And not opening up his church during the flooding in Houston, right? How do we respond to these things? How do we respond to these things on social media? He got hammered on social media. What do? Hurricanes Harvey and Irma, right? This isn't even a social media mistake, but these are crises that are happening that can potentially throw our editorial calendar out the window. And Charleston, Virginia. How do we respond to the riots in Charleston? Do we respond to the riots in Charleston, etc.? But if you have that whole plan into place, you know who to call to make the decision so that you can respond in a timely manner, because social media needs to be quick. And then finally, evaluation. What are the metrics that matter? How do you know if you're being effective? Well, if you really clearly define the behavior you're trying to change, if that behavior's changed, then you know you're being effective. But the big thing with evaluation is that our principals really, really like the big numbers. And it's easy to get big numbers if you look at things like potential reach or hits, right? potential reach, if everybody in this room tweeted something about my presentation today, I could probably say, yeah, I reached 13,000 people today, right? Did I really reach 13,000? Not at all. I don't even know if I reached everybody in this room. So hits, somebody, I forget who said it, that it was how idiots track success. Okay, and this guy's my idiot guy, in case you're wondering about the picture. I did a search for hits, how idiots track success, and that's actually the picture that came up. But as a general rule of what's more effective and less effective, I look at the Facebook hierarchy. Views are the least effective, right? If somebody's looking at your stuff, you don't know what they're thinking, you don't know what they think about it. It's the least effective measure of what's going on. Likes are better, because somebody's taking the time to respond to what you've done, right? Technically, actually, I was just watching a video the other day about Facebook and likes versus the other reactions, because Facebook has those 6 other reactions now. In the Facebook algorithms, they're still all weighted the same. But in my personal book, I would think that the other reactions, would be just slightly better than a like, except for maybe if it's the anger one or the sad one. Because somebody's taking the time to at least hover that mouse over and do a different reaction. So it means at least a little bit more to them, right? Comments, that's going to be something that's even better because they're commenting on it. And then shares are money, because that means they liked that content enough that they're sharing it with their friends. Okay. Now, when we're evaluating things and we're looking at things like comments, especially, just because something has 50 comments doesn't mean that it was a good piece of content, because all those comments can be negative, right? And so when I was working at the State Department, I always say, this is a good task for an intern, is to go through and decide which comments are positive and which comments are negative and see if there's a change over time and all of that kind of stuff, right? Now, there is software out there that can help you do that. It's called content analysis software. There's a couple sites that are pretty good, but what they don't do is look at sarcasm or general slang usage. I had a kid one time, I had just bought a new pair of shoes. This teenager comes over, he's gonna babysit my kids or whatever, and he saw my pair of shoes. He's like, whoa, those are sick shoes, right? Which to a 15-year-old is a very positive comment. But if that was on social media, it would be captured as a negative comment if you're just using the software. So you have to be careful about that. And since I'm on the Facebook hierarchy, the other thing that I want to do, just really quickly when we're talking about Facebook hierarchy, is they also have a hierarchy of the content that you produce on your site. Text is seen the least by people within your friend base, followed by links, followed by pictures, followed by videos. My sister posted something the other day. It was some stupid meme, but it was a still photo that had been turned into a 5-second video. And she's like, why are they doing this, right? Why do they make these stupid videos when it could just be a picture? Well, the reason why is because Facebook bumps up videos so that more people see it. So my suggestion to you is not do that because it's annoying. But videos that people share are going to be seen the most by other people. So that's another reason why I was really impressed with the Episcopalians and the message from Stephen Curry, was not only was it a good video, but it had gotten shared. And that's really kind of the money when it comes to the Facebook hierarchy. And that's it, I think. So now I have time for questions. And I have some questions. Okay, so what is the best way to do this? Do I stop sharing my screen here? So if I stop sharing this screen, okay, and now I'm here. That's perfect. Okay, so it's kind of, sorry for this angle that you guys have been watching this whole time. It's kind of like, nobody looks good that way. So Chastity Neckers says, what are the lowest platforms or ways to create an editorial calendar? The easiest way to create an editorial calendar is just on a calendar. You know, I think that Kurt is going to go into his platform in a month from now that he likes as a kind of a social media managing scheduling tool. But when I would do it, I would just do it on a calendar. I had a Word doc, and it was just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is the calendar, and we could just start sketching in what we were going to do. It doesn't have to be high tech. It doesn't have to be, you know, even high quality. Just as long as you have, this is the day I'm going to do this. This is the day I'm going to do this, and you have an eye towards what's going to be coming out in the future. Christy House has a million questions. Just one question. So tips on the best ways to engage on Twitter. Direct questions to followers, or invitation to participation in something, or somehow, or stories, facts that intrigue, or calls to action. The answer is yes. And that comes from knowing your audience and knowing what your audience is looking at and what your audience likes. When I'm looking at my audience and trying to define what my audience is like, there tends to be a lot more questions at the beginning, right? In terms of, do you like this content? Send us feedback. How are we doing? That kind of stuff. The invitation to participate in some way, when you say retweet this, if you also stand with whatever cause of the day, right? I actually was reading an article the other day that said if you ask followers to retweet, it actually makes them less likely to retweet. Which is a new development, because 3-4 years ago it was if you said RT this, and if you spelled out retweet was actually more likely than just saying RT to get you people to actually retweet something. So there was an article the other day saying that was turning people off. Stories, facts that intrigue, that's always going to grab people's attention, but it might not necessarily make them retweet you back. So it depends on which kind of engagement you're looking for. It might get them to share it, but it just depends. It all comes from knowing your audience. And calls to action, if there's a behavior that you want them to change, of course, by all means, call them to that action and get them to change that behavior. Emily says, the best ways to use Instagram, Snapchat, or mobile. So with all social media, right? And this is tips for all social media. What I look at is things that are going to engage and things that are going to give you a chance to be social. So when you're using Instagram, make sure that you're posting good pictures, right? And I have a whole presentation on how to take good pictures because that's part of it, but I'm not going to give that today. But when we're looking at good pictures, somebody once said, everybody's a good photographer if you only show people your good pictures, right? And in today's day and age, with all of our electronic pictures, you know, and our digital photo taking, we can take 1,500 pictures. So why are we posting 1,500 on social media? We shouldn't be posting 1,500 on social media. We post 2. We post the good pictures, right? So best ways to use Instagram, only post your good pictures. Make sure you're tagging people. Make sure you're responding to people. Make sure that you're using the hashtags to lead to other things, especially if you're having a big event, so that people can see what other people are saying at the event. Snapchat, I will admit that I don't think that Snapchat is the best, simply because of its temporary nature. Maybe sometimes that's good, but in terms of institutional social media, I don't like it as much for institutional social media. Rebecca White Cotton says, is it okay to post to Twitter and have that automatically post to Facebook, or is it preferable to post to the specific platform? So we didn't get into social media management at all. And I have to apologize because if you look at my Twitter feed right now, it's almost all just direct repost from Twitter, or excuse me, from Instagram. And so I'm not practicing what I preach right now. In terms of as a social media manager and representing an institution, the voice on Twitter and the style on Twitter is very different than on Facebook. And it's different on Instagram too. So on Facebook, people still don't really know what a hashtag is. They use hashtags ironically, right? They don't really use hashtags. Twitter, you can use 3-4 hashtags. People are fine. Instagram, you can use like 87. Instagrammers love their hashtags. And so as a social media manager, you know, there's a different kind of feel for a lot of this social media. So you don't want to necessarily just cross-post, right? Especially because if you're cross-posting something from Facebook to Twitter, it also cuts it off halfway through. And, you know, if you're just doing that, then people are just going to follow you on Facebook. They're not going to worry about you on Twitter, right? There's no point in it. With a lot of social media management tools like Hootsuite or TweetDeck, etc., it's super easy to post different things. You take your post from Facebook, you post it on Facebook, you copy and paste it, you're on the same platform, you tweak it a little bit for Twitter. It makes it a lot more personal to each platform. Sorry, that was a long answer for a short question. I'm impressed with all the questions. Samantha Tannenbaum says, for Facebook, is it better to upload videos directly or link to YouTube or Vimeo? Facebook likes to be proprietary. And so Facebook really wants you to stay on Facebook. If you're linking to YouTube or Vimeo, you're often exiting Facebook to go to that site, and Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook. And so it's good to do the Facebook. It's easier to just do it on YouTube and post the video on YouTube, but Facebook likes you to stay on Facebook. What are the standard amount of posts to Facebook, 1 or 2 per day? Yep. Are too many a bad thing? So this goes back to audience size and numbers that impress the boss, okay? When we started, so this was in Stockholm, so sorry, I'm going back a few years, but when we started our social media feed in Stockholm, our only goal was to have more followers than the embassy in Oslo. We didn't really care about where these followers came from. We just wanted to make sure that we had more than Norway did, right? Because there always is this rivalry between Sweden and Norway, both in terms of the countries themselves and in terms of the U.S. embassies there. But we looked through, after ensuring that we had more followers than Oslo did, we looked through our demographics that you can get when you're the manager, and we looked through the demographics and we found that fully half of our followers were from Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, any guesses where our ambassador was from? Okay, was that our target audience? No. And so we spent some resources and some time trying to build up the Swedish audience, because simply having more followers than Norway wasn't really going to be the best thing in the world. But the whole thing with followers is that if I have 1,000 followers, does anybody know what percentage of those followers actually see something I post? Do all 1,000 see it? No, right? 17% is all. Okay, so if I have 1,000 followers, that's 170. My math is correct. Only 170 of them are seeing something, right? And so what happens on Facebook especially, this is all getting back to Annette's question, is if you post too much, then Facebook stops prioritizing your additional posts, right? So everybody may see the first post, everybody may see the second post, but then the third, fourth post, like Facebook says, they don't care about this. Now, a lot of people, I'm going to go on a tangent for a second. A lot of people get upset with Facebook's algorithm, right? Because they're like, I want to see everything that my friends post. But the answer is we don't really. The Facebook actually has done a really good job of tweaking their algorithm. And this is just something I found out the other day. They actually have people come into Facebook, real life people, and they give them 100 posts from their friends that are actually on their Facebook page. And they ask these people to rank order them 1 through 100. And they compare that stack from most important to least important to how this person actually defined their stack of most important to least important to what the Facebook algorithm does. And they compare the two and make sure that they're the same. And they're actually really close. And so really what we're seeing on Facebook is really what's the most important. What's going to bump up post on Facebook? Comments, shares. If 5 of my friends are commenting on something, then that's going to be a more important post. It's going to get bumped up. Which takes me to another tangent, and I apologize. I'll get to everybody's questions. That's making things go viral. A lot of times our principals will be like, I want you to create a viral video. right? And we're like, yeah, there is no formula for virality, if you can say that like that. Sometimes things go viral, sometimes they don't. I was amazed the other day, I was telling somebody this before we started, but I am very OCD when it comes to a lot of things in my life. And one of them is the way I eat my trail mix. Because I eat my almonds first, and then my peanuts, and then my cashews, and then my raisins, and then my M&Ms. The M&Ms are also in color order: brown, yellow, orange, green, red, blue. I kid you not. But I was curious the other day, and so I posted something on Facebook like, what order would you guys eat your trail mix in? I'm just curious if your order matches my order, expecting 1 or 2 answers, right? That was the most viral post I've had in years. Everybody was commenting, very heated discussions about the merits of raisins and trail mix in general. There's no way of knowing what's going to go viral or not. So really what you need to concentrate on is creating good content, creating solid content, in the hopes that it will go viral. And if it does, you pat yourself on the back, it was happy, but it's not necessarily going to go viral. Adrian Graham says, what are the best resources to use for planning and posting, such as Hootsuite? How are they best used? This will be covered in Kurt's October 10 webinar in more detail. When I was actually a practitioner, I really liked Hootsuite because everything was on one page. So, how are they best used? Personally, for me, what I would do is I had 2 screens in my office, and on my one screen, I had everything I was working on, and my other screen, I had Hootsuite pulled up all the time so that I could kind of side monitor it and see what was going on and see what people were saying, if there was anything I needed to reply to, etc. But I always had that tab open. But it will be covered in more detail in a few weeks. Any thoughts, preferences, and sponsored content or boosted posts? I have no problem with sponsored content and boosted posts. Why? Because your audience, it helps you reach your audience better. When you buy a Facebook ad or try to boost content on Facebook, it has you define who that goes to very narrowly. And if you're not doing it narrowly, you're doing it wrong, right? So if I want to do something, I would say people that say my big thing representing the LDS Church, we have the Book of Mormon musical, right? Say I'm trying to reach people that like the Book of Mormon musical to let them know that the Book of Mormon musical is nothing like Mormonism, right? Then I can go there the ages of 25 and 40 that live in New York that like the Book of Mormon musical. And I can hit that target audience very, very narrowly instead of just broadcasting it out. I know who I'm reaching, right? There was a big scandal a couple years ago with the State Department that the State Department spent $15 million buying likes, right? And that was not true at all. There are companies where you can go through and you can say, hey, buy 15,000 fake likes, right? But the State Department was buying advertising, is what they were doing. And I just forget the exact dollar figure, but we were trying to reach a more specific audience. And I think it's perfectly okay to do that. Jonathan Cooper with Episcopal Schools. We have 2 times as many on Twitter versus Facebook. Yeah, we get 5 times as much interaction on Facebook. So focus more on Facebook, build Twitter, do keep both. Yes. I mean, it depends on what the interaction is, what your audience is, what you're trying to change. Taking a look at that. If the Twitter interaction is people that you can actually discuss things with, then that's great. If Facebook is just that first category of people that love you no matter what you do, then maybe you need to spend less time on Facebook and get to where you can actually change some behavior. Terry Lackey, where does the 17% number come from? I'd like to show my boss. Is it religion specific? It's not religion specific. I forget where it came from. But if you look at your post, you can see the reach of your post and you know that it's not 100% of your followers. The amount of people that have seen it or interact with it. I can see if I can find that specific number of that research somewhere. Also the info about don't post too many posts, where is that from? That is from both reading articles about Facebook, and it's also from personal experience, because as soon as you start posting too many things, people stop interacting with it. Comment, your trail mix story was vulnerability, personality, humor, honesty, and therefore funny and resonated. Tough for institutions to replicate with a voice, and that's true. When we're representing institutions, it's a lot harder to have that kind of voice, right? But it is possible to, when you have those parameters defined, it is possible to interact even as the representative of an institution. And when you are able to break down some of those barriers by letting people know that there's a person behind the social media account, or there's a person behind the robe, or there's a person behind the collar, or there's a person behind whatever, then you're going to be able to attract a greater base, change behavior, engage more with your audience, and have a better social media feed. And I think that's it, right? So when Bud's going to wrap it up. Thank you all very much for tuning in and listening. I appreciate it. And maybe we'll do more stuff like this in the future.
Thank you. We had about 50 people on with us today. A lot of people joining us online, so thank you very much for participating. Also, apologies for the slight, for the first few moments, having a sound problem at the very beginning, but thank you everyone for sticking with us. This webinar will appear online on the Religion Communicators website at religioncommunicators.org. Again, we have on October 10th, Kurt Bertwani with us from Phillips Theological Seminary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He'll be speaking about a tool that helps you manage your social media presence and is a time saver, specifically Buffer, but he'll also be talking about some related components or competitor products and his use of Buffer to basically in its job context. So it's taking it to another level in terms of the management aspect of some of the things that Ryan was sharing with us today. And again, just as a reminder as well, on January 26th in Los Angeles at the University of Southern California, RCC and RNA will have a cooperative conference, a one-day conference focused on new forms of religiosity, new forms of community and storytelling in that. It will actually feature secular religious reporters, people from Hollywood who work in media on religion. It's an exciting one-day opportunity on Friday, January 26th. And the annual conference is April 5th through the 7th at the Sheraton Hotel in Atlanta. Thanks for being on with us today.
I'm like scared to make noise.